The question nobody wanted to answer was simple: what do you do when the person destroying your empire is someone you love? Not destroy them back. Not write them off as a casualty. Not pretend they don't exist. But actually face the impossible mathematics of family loyalty versus organizational survival. Bumpy Johnson spent his entire life building power through ruthlessness. He made men disappear. He enforced discipline through fear. He understood that in the underworld, sentiment was a liability and mercy was a weakness. But in 1957, when his younger brother William came to him with trembling hands and hollow eyes, asking for help, Bumpy discovered that some choices can't be solved by violence or authority or money. Some choices destroy you no matter what decision you make. To understand what happened with William Johnson, you have to go back to Charleston, South Carolina, where both brothers were born. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson was born in 1905. His real name was Ellsworth, but people called him Bumpy because of the literal bumps on his head, a condition from childhood that left permanent marks on his skull. The bumps never bothered him, but they marked him as different. As the strange child. As someone set apart from the beginning. William Johnson was born in 1910, 5 years later. Different family circumstances. Different personality. Where Bumpy grew up with edges, with hardness, with the kind of temperament that turned adversity into motivation, William grew up softer. He was handsome in ways Bumpy wasn't. He was charming in ways Bumpy struggled to be. He was someone who made friends easily and who people naturally liked. Their father died when William was 3. Their mother died when Bumpy was 13 and William was 8. After that, there was no one but each other. Bumpy, as the older brother, took responsibility for William. Got him food. Got him shelter. Made sure he went to school. Became a substitute parent at an age when most boys were still figuring out who they were. This created a bond that was unbreakable but also complicated. Bumpy loved William. But Bumpy also knew that love in the underworld could become liability. Love could be used against you. Love could make you weak. So when Bumpy left Charleston for Harlem in the 1920s, he told William to stay behind. To finish school. To build a legitimate life. To not follow him into the streets. William listened for a while. But blood calls to blood, and eventually, William came north to Harlem to find his older brother. William arrived in Harlem in 1932, 17 years old, looking for Bumpy. He found him. By that time, Bumpy was already becoming legendary. Already running numbers operations. Already making serious money. Already building the infrastructure that would eventually give him control over Harlem's underworld. William expected to be integrated into that world. Expected to be given a position. Expected to inherit some of his brother's power and prestige. Instead, Bumpy pushed him away. "You're not doing this," Bumpy told him. "You're going to school. You're going to get an education. You're going to have a legitimate life. I'm doing this so you don't have to." William was devastated. His older brother had succeeded enormously in the criminal world, and he was refusing to share any of it. Refusing to use his position to help his own family member. It seemed like rejection. Like Bumpy was saying that William wasn't good enough for the life Bumpy had built. So William found work doing legitimate jobs. Factory work. Dock work. Labor that paid poorly but kept him away from crime. He lived in a small apartment in Harlem, watched his brother build an empire, and wondered why Bumpy wouldn't let him join it. This created resentment. Not expressed openly, not to Bumpy's face, but underlying everything. William felt like he'd been abandoned by the one person who should have understood him. Felt like he was being excluded from the very thing that gave Bumpy his identity and his power. Over the years, William tried to get Bumpy to change his mind. Tried to convince him that he was old enough now, smart enough, capable enough to work in the organization. But Bumpy refused every request. Refused every appeal. Refused to let William into the business. "Why are you so determined to keep me out?" William finally asked him one evening in the late 1940s. Bumpy's response was simple and cold, "Because I know what this life does to people. And I'm not going to watch it do that to you." William heard the refusal, but he didn't hear the protection underneath it. He just heard the word no. In 1955, William Johnson was 30 years old. He'd never married. Had never found legitimate work that felt meaningful. Had spent his entire adult life working jobs that made him feel invisible, watching his brother build an empire that he felt excluded from, building up resentment that had nowhere to go and no way to express itself. That's when he discovered heroin. Not through criminal connections. Not through anyone in Bumpy's organization. William found it the way millions of people find it, through someone at a bar. Through someone at a party. Through someone who said, "Try this, it'll help you relax." The first time William used heroin, it felt like coming home. All the anxiety disappeared. All the resentment disappeared. All the feelings of being excluded and rejected and less than disappeared. For a few hours, William felt like everything was fine. Like he was someone special. Like the world made sense. Then the feeling faded, and he needed it again. At first, it was once a week. Then twice a week. Then 3 times a week. By the middle of 1955, William was using nearly every day. And by the end of 1955, he'd started selling things to pay for it. His furniture. His watch. His decent clothes. His dignity, piece by piece. He was careful to hide it from Bumpy. Careful to still show up to family dinners. Careful to act like everything was normal when his older brother saw him. But Bumpy could see it. Bumpy saw the weight loss. Saw the eyes that looked hollow. Saw the hands that shook. Saw a younger brother who was disappearing into addiction while trying desperately to hide it. One evening in late 1955, Bumpy called William to his office. "You're using," Bumpy said. Not a question. A statement. William denied it. Said Bumpy was imagining things. Said he was fine. Said everything was good. "You're lying," Bumpy said. "And I don't want to know what you're using, because if I know, I'll have to do something about it. So I'm going to give you a choice. You get yourself into a rehabilitation program. You get clean. You never touch anything like that again. Or you never speak to me again." William said he'd get clean. Said he'd find a program. Said it was just a phase. Said he'd handle it. He didn't handle it. The addiction was already too deep. The heroin had already reorganized his entire brain chemistry, his entire understanding of what he needed to survive. By early 1956, William wasn't just using. He was stealing to support his habit. The collection house on 142nd Street was one of Bumpy's legitimate fronts, a small business that ostensibly sold newspapers and magazines but that was actually the hub for collecting numbers bets from half the neighborhood. The manager was a man named Robert Chin, efficient and honest. He kept meticulous records. He reported money accurately. He'd worked there for 8 years without a single discrepancy. Until William Johnson walked in one evening asking to work. Robert didn't know that William was Bumpy's brother. Didn't know about the family connection. He just knew that William needed a job and Robert had been authorized by the main office to hire extra help for the evening shift. So William got the job. For 2 weeks, Robert didn't notice anything wrong. William was quiet, kept to himself, did his work. And then, on the 15th day, Robert did the evening count and discovered that $500 was missing. He recounted. Still missing. He checked the logs. William had logged all the bets correctly. He'd processed all the numbers correctly. But somehow, $500 of cash that should have been in the safe wasn't there. Robert called Bumpy immediately. "Your brother stole from the collection house," Robert said over the phone. There was a long silence. "You're sure?" Bumpy finally asked. "The count's short by 500. I can't account for it any other way. And William was the only one with access to the safe tonight." Another silence. "Fire him. File a report. I'll handle the money." That was all Bumpy said. He hung up without asking for details. Without expressing anger. Without emotional response of any kind. But that night, Bumpy called William in. The conversation that happened in Bumpy's office was private. No one was present except the two brothers. But afterward, William left the office with tears on his face and a bruise on his cheek where Bumpy had hit him. The message was clear: "I love you, and that love means you can't do this." William promised he'd get clean. Said the theft was a mistake. Said he'd go into treatment. Said he'd pay back the money with his own labor. Bumpy told him he had 1 month to get into a program or Bumpy would cut him off completely. William said he would. He didn't. What follows is a pattern that repeats in every addiction story. The addicted person makes a promise they can't keep. The loved one believes them, wants to believe them, needs to believe that the person they love is capable of change. The addicted person tries for 3 days, maybe 4, and then the physical craving becomes overwhelming and the promise breaks and the cycle continues. By the summer of 1956, William had stolen from Bumpy's operations multiple times. Small amounts each time. $50 here. $100 there. Money stolen from collections, money skimmed from payouts, money taken in ways that didn't immediately trigger alarms but that added up. The people in Bumpy's organization noticed. Started mentioning it to their boss. "Your brother's stealing," Marcus Webb told Bumpy in August. "Not huge amounts, but consistent. 5, 6 times in the last month. We've been letting it slide because he's your brother, but people are starting to notice. It's affecting morale. It's making people question whether rules apply to family." Bumpy listened without responding. "What do you want us to do about it?" Marcus asked. "Nothing," Bumpy said. "Don't mention it to him. Don't confront him. Just document it. I'll handle it." But Bumpy didn't handle it. Instead, he watched. Watched his brother deteriorate. Watched him steal. Watched him become someone he didn't recognize. Watched addiction consume the person he tried so hard to protect by keeping him out of the criminal life in the first place. By September 1956, William owed money to dealers he was buying from. Not dealers connected to Bumpy's organization. Independent dealers. People who didn't know that William was Bumpy Johnson's brother. People who just knew that William owed them money and wasn't paying it back. When William couldn't pay, they came looking for him. The beating happened on the corner of 135th and Lenox. 3 men, in broad daylight, beat William with baseball bats because he owed them $40 for heroin he'd already used. $40. That was the debt that resulted in permanent damage, 2 broken ribs, a fractured jaw, and the kind of trauma that comes from realizing that the world doesn't care about you or protect you just because you're someone's brother. A friend of William's called Bumpy's office and told him what had happened. By the time Bumpy arrived at the hospital, William was already being treated. The doctor said he'd recover, but he'd be in pain for weeks. He'd need time to heal. Bumpy sat next to his brother's hospital bed and looked at him with an expression that mixed love and devastation in equal measure. "This ends," Bumpy said quietly. "Tonight. I'm making a phone call, and you're being checked into a facility upstate. Tomorrow morning, someone's coming to pick you up. You're going to spend the next 6 weeks getting clean. You're going to do this because you love me and because I love you and because if you don't, I'm going to have to make a choice that will destroy both of us." William said he understood. Said he'd go. Said he was ready. He wasn't ready. But Bumpy needed to believe he was. The rehabilitation center was in upstate New York, about 90 minutes from the city. It was a private facility, expensive, the kind of place that usually served wealthy people but that Bumpy had paid to accept his brother. The staff was professional. The program was intense. William was given medication to manage the withdrawal symptoms. He was put into therapy. He was separated completely from the city and from any access to heroin. For the first 2 weeks, he was in pure hell. His body was screaming for the drug. Every nerve ending was firing signals demanding that he use. He vomited. He couldn't sleep. He felt like he was dying. But around week 3, something shifted. The physical craving began to recede. He started sleeping normal hours. He started eating real food without immediately vomiting. He started being able to think clearly about things other than the next fix. In week 4, he had a breakthrough. He was sitting in group therapy, listening to other addicts tell their stories, and he suddenly understood something: his addiction wasn't a moral failing. It wasn't a weakness. It was a medical condition. A hijacking of his brain chemistry. And healing from it was possible if he was willing to do the work. He called Bumpy from the facility phone. "I think I'm getting better," William said. His voice was clearer than it had been in months. "I'm thinking differently. I'm understanding things I didn't understand before. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for forcing me to do this. Because if you'd let me choose, I would have chosen to keep using." Bumpy listened. And for the first time in a long time, Bumpy believed that his brother might actually be okay. Might actually be able to come back from this. Might actually rebuild something resembling a life. But addiction isn't something you defeat permanently. It's something you manage for life. And William was about to learn that lesson in the harshest way possible. William came back to Harlem after 6 weeks of intensive treatment. He had a sponsor, a man named David who'd also struggled with heroin and who'd been clean for 3 years. David's job was to check in with William regularly, to be available if the craving became overwhelming, to help William navigate the transition back into a life where heroin was available on every corner. For the first few weeks, it went well. William didn't use. Didn't even feel the temptation. Felt like the treatment had actually worked. Felt like he was genuinely clean. Then week 4 hit. He was walking past a corner on 125th Street where dealers operated. It was evening. He was tired from work. His resolve was lower than usual. And he saw someone he knew from before, someone who'd used with him, someone who said, "Hey, remember how good it felt? I can get you some right now." The craving that hit him was overwhelming. Not the physical craving, he was past that. This was the psychological craving. The memory of how good it felt. The promise that one hit wouldn't hurt. The lie that he could use just this once and then get back to being clean. He used. It was just once. Just once meant he had to use again the next day. Just once meant that by the end of the week, he was using multiple times a day again. He tried to hide it. Tried to pretend everything was fine when his sponsor called. Tried to maintain the fiction that he was actually clean. But addiction is obvious once you know what you're looking for. His sponsor noticed. Suggested going back to the facility. Suggested increasing therapy sessions. Suggested doing whatever it took to get back on track. William agreed. But he didn't follow through. Because addiction is also a master of rationalization. It's brilliant at convincing you that you have it under control. That you're not like those other addicts. That you'll quit tomorrow. That today doesn't count. By March 1957, William was right back where he'd been before the facility. Using daily. Stealing to support his habit. Invisible to everyone except the people who knew exactly what to look for. Bumpy called William in again. This time there was no anger. No shock. Just a kind of resigned sadness that was somehow worse than anger would have been. "You used again," Bumpy said. It wasn't a question. William tried to deny it, but he was tired of lying, tired of pretending, tired of the constant effort it took to hide his addiction. "Yes," William finally said. "I used. I went to the facility and I got clean and I came back and I used again." "Why?" "Because it's harder than I thought. Because wanting to be clean isn't the same as being able to stay clean. Because I don't know how to exist in Harlem without using." Bumpy stood up and walked to the window of his office. He looked out at the street below. At Harlem. At the world he'd built. At the neighborhood he controlled. "I have 3 options," Bumpy said without turning around. "Option 1, I let you keep using. I do nothing. I let addiction consume you until you're dead or so damaged that recovery is impossible. That's the easiest path for me because it requires nothing except looking away." He turned back to face William. "Option 2, I put you under surveillance. I assign someone to watch you constantly. I restrict your movements. I try to control your behavior by force. I keep you alive but I keep you imprisoned. You're not in jail, but you're not free either." Bumpy sat back down at his desk. "Option 3, I send you somewhere that isn't here. Somewhere far away from Harlem. Somewhere that you have to build something completely new. Somewhere that you can't fall back on me. Somewhere that forces you to either become independent or disappear completely. What do you want me to choose?" William asked quietly. "It doesn't matter what I want," Bumpy said. "What matters is what you choose. But understand this, if you stay in Harlem and if you use again, I can't protect you. I can't save you. I can only watch you destroy yourself. And I can't do that anymore." William understood. He understood that his brother had reached the limit of what love could do. Understood that Bumpy couldn't fix him. Understood that the only person who could save William was William. "I want to stay," William said. "I want to stay and get clean for real this time." Bumpy looked at his brother for a long moment. Looked at the face that resembled his own. Looked at the eyes that held the same blood. Bumpy Johnson gave his younger brother William one final chance. He didn't threaten him. He didn't punish him. He didn't exile him immediately. Instead, he offered an ultimatum rooted in hope rather than control: 3 months. If William stayed clean, they would talk about rebuilding his life. If he didn't, Bumpy would walk away completely. William said he understood. What followed were the hardest months of his life. He genuinely tried to quit heroin, but he had no real support system. No rehabilitation structure. No place to go when cravings overwhelmed him. No one to call in the middle of the night when addiction screamed louder than reason. All he had was Bumpy's warning, and it wasn't enough. By April, William was using again. By May, multiple times a day. By June, he was barely functional, emaciated, hollow-eyed, consumed from the inside out. On June 15, Bumpy summoned him. "Show me your arms," he said. The track marks told the story: fresh, infected, scarred. "You lied to me," Bumpy said quietly. "I tried," William replied. "I really tried. I just can't stay clean." "I know," Bumpy said. "That's why I'm not angry. I'm sad." Bumpy handed him an envelope filled with money, enough to survive, enough to start somewhere else. "You're leaving Harlem today," he said. "Go somewhere my name means nothing. Somewhere you have to choose between recovery and death." "What if I die?" William asked. "Then you die clean," Bumpy said. "Not here. Not where people I love have to watch." William left Harlem that day and never returned. Years later, Bumpy learned that William had ended up in Memphis. That he'd gotten clean. Stayed clean for 2 years. Then relapsed. He overdosed in a motel room in 1959. He was 29. The cause of death was listed as accidental overdose. The real cause was addiction, a disease untouched by love, money, or power. When Bumpy heard the news, he said only, "Okay," and went back to work. But those close to him noticed something change. He became colder. More controlled. Less vulnerable. Later in life, when asked about family, Bumpy said he had none. When pressed about his brother, he finally admitted the truth: he couldn't save him, no matter how much power he had. William Johnson was never famous. But his story revealed the ultimate limit of power: you can control people, territory, money, and systems, but not addiction, not biology, not another person's will to survive. Bumpy ruled Harlem. But he couldn't save his brother. And that failure taught him the lesson no empire ever could. Some things cannot be controlled. Some people cannot be saved. And sometimes, the most powerful thing in the world is the most fragile thing of all: loving someone you can't save.